So the store Kohls just had to learn a really big lesson that has a lot to do with your nonprofit. Want to know what I'm talking about? Keep watching this video because I'm going to share a lesson to make sure that you don't get in trouble with the IRS. So I'm going to share a story about their now fired CEO. His name is Ashley Buchanan. And it was discovered that he had an improper relationship with one of the vendors of the company. But here's how he messed up. So first of all, Ashley hasn't been on the job more than 6 months. He just joined in January of 2025. And as the recording of this video, it's May 2025. He's already been let go. So what actually happened? So there's not a lot that has been released publicly. Not even the names have been mentioned, but people are making educated guesses about it. But the CEO directed the company to create a multi-million-dollar contracting arrangement with a consulting group. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, his girlfriend was a key member of that consulting group. And the reason why it raised red flags is because that contract was given unusually favorable terms. And again, this information hasn't been public, so we don't know the details of the arrangement, and we don't know exactly what was unusually favorable. And where he messed up was he did not disclose, neither one of them disclosed that they had a personal relationship with each other. So we have this scenario. His girlfriend works for a company. He directs a whole lot of money to this company so that potentially his girlfriend can benefit from that relationship. And because he didn't disclose it, Kohls found out about it and he was immediately fired. So what does this have to do with your nonprofit, and what can you learn from this lesson? There are 3 things I want to pull out that nonprofits need to know, because whether you realize it or not, most of you guys have created a nonprofit corporation. So the same way Kohls has to operate in disclosing things and make sure there's not self-dealing and make sure that there are appropriate relationships, the same way these big corporations have to act, your nonprofit organization has to maintain that same level of integrity, whether you realize it or not. So I'm going to pull out 3 things you should be mindful of to make sure your nonprofit is in compliance and does not fall in the trap that poor Ashley Buchanan fell into. But let me say this, he's probably going to have a job tomorrow, so he'll be fine. So over the next couple of minutes, we're going to talk about disclosure of conflict of interest. We're going to talk about reasonable compensation, and then we're just going to talk about personal benefits to you as the founder or as a board member of your nonprofit. If you don't know me, I'm Tiffany with Boss in a Budget. I teach people to start nonprofits and how to raise money from the ground up. And I specifically talk from the experience of new and small nonprofits because there's not a lot of information out there to help guide those people along their journey. So the first point is disclosing conflicts of interest. You should be disclosing any potential conflicts of interest with your organization. So one example might be your nonprofit wants to do business with an organization, but someone on the board either works for that organization, owns that organization, or has a personal or business relationship with that other organization you want to do business with. That is a potential conflict. This is one of the areas that the IRS pays a lot of attention to. If you look at the paperwork that you're asked to fill out year after year on the 990 form, there are questions about disclosures of conflict of interest, and there are questions about how your organization handles those conflicts of interest. And it's highly recommended that you have a policy in place to address the issues when those conflicts arise. So some people get a little intimidated by this and they feel like any kind of conflict, or if there's any situation where they stand to benefit, they can't do anything. But that's not true. The whole point of this is for you to manage the conflicts of interest. So for example, maybe you have some kind of expertise and you serve on a board of a nonprofit, and you're willing to lend your professional expertise to the nonprofit for a fee, but you may be discounting that fee because you're affiliated with the nonprofit. Well, your organization, to be fair, may be looking at other people who can do similar work, but in the end, you all decide to go with you because you know the mission well and you're good at what you do. There's nothing wrong with making that decision. It's all about how you make that decision. So if you have a policy in place, typically that policy will advise you on what to do. If there's a decision that the board has to make, the person who's personally affected or directly impacted by that decision cannot be a part of that vote, can't be a part of that discussion. The board has to separately deliberate and figure out what to do. It's also a good idea to look at other people, to consider other people you may want to work with if you're considering working with somebody who's affiliated with your board. Also, it's good to do your research. So what is the market rate for something that you're trying to purchase, and see if what you're being charged is actually reasonable based on what whoever's affiliated with the organization is willing to do for you. These are examples of things you can do to manage those conflicts and to figure out whether or not you still want to go with a person who stands to benefit because they have a relationship with your nonprofit. So the bottom line is you need to disclose, and you should do this at least on an annual basis, if anybody on your board, and that includes you, has a potential conflict of interest. Maybe you stand to benefit by the decision that the nonprofit may make, and you really should disclose that. Whether or not your organization moves forward with it or not, you should be open and transparent about what does potentially exist. And I always tell people, if the IRS is asking about it on one of their forms, that means they care about it, and that means that's something they are going to monitor. So you need to stay up on that. If you're curious about how to start a nonprofit after listening to this video, make sure you comment startup checklist below, and I'll send you my free startup checklist that guides you through the steps it takes to start a nonprofit. Here's the second thing you need to be mindful of: reasonable compensation. If you decide to compensate anybody with your organization, it needs to be reasonable. That means that you all need to do your due diligence to make sure that what you're offering, not just in terms of salary, but also in terms of any other fringe benefits or any other type of compensation that you're providing to somebody, that you need to make sure that it's reasonable. So I'm going to provide on the screen the actual definition from the IRS about what they consider to be reasonable compensation, but it's basically what would be similarly provided in similar circumstances for similar services that are to be provided. So you don't want to pay people extra when normally, under normal circumstances, people who would do that job on an everyday basis wouldn't get paid that much. You're really putting yourself at risk, or putting your organization at risk, when you choose to compensate people above and beyond, and those people are affiliated somehow with the organization. Either they serve on the board, so they're making decisions for themselves to get unreasonable compensation, or they're looking to help somebody that they're close with or have a relationship with to get unreasonable compensation. And this is where Ashley really messed up. So he negotiated terms that were very favorable, and that's unfair. Right? That was a biased situation, and he funneled money towards people that he had a personal relationship with. When you serve on the board of directors of a nonprofit, your job is to be loyal to the mission. You're not loyal to yourself as the founder, your wishes, your dreams, and your desires. That's not where your loyalties should lie. Your loyalties should lie to what's best for the organization and what's best in order for you to fulfill your mission. And sometimes that means that certain decisions you make, you're not necessarily going to agree with on a personal level, but you know that it's best for the organization. That's the role that you have to play as a board member and as the founder of your organization. So in doing that, you have to take the steps to ensure that whatever compensation you're providing for any kind of services for whoever is getting those services is reasonable. Just because you're the founder does not give you any kind of special status or means you deserve any special kind of compensation because it was your idea or you're owed for all the work that you put in. You got to be really careful about that, because you have to remember that this is an independent organization, and you're not entitled, legally, you're not entitled to anything personally that's created or raised or developed by the nonprofit organization. If you are confused by some of this, I did a video on what is a board of directors where I talked a little bit about the duties of a board of directors. So check out this video that I'm linking above. I also went a little deeper. I have a boards masterclass where I really talk about the responsibilities of board members and what are their legal and ethical duties. So if you want to purchase that boards masterclass, just comment boards masterclass below and I will send you a link. And the third and last point I want to bring up is that you cannot personally benefit from your affiliation with the organization. And I previewed this a little bit in the last point that I talked about, but you have to understand that yes, it's your baby. Yes, this is your idea. Yes, this is something you've always dreamed of, but it's still an independent entity. When you decide to create a nonprofit corporation, it is an independent organization, independent of your wishes and your desires and your dreams. Now, because I know you're like, Tiffany, what do you mean? Why would I create an organization and go through all the work, sweat, and tears without it fulfilling my wishes and desires? Well, let me say this. A lot of times that's an alignment. A lot of times you being able to fulfill your mission, start your nonprofit, is the same as you fulfilling your wishes, your dreams, and your desires. But sometimes those things separate. Sometimes what you want to do, maybe you want to stay safe, or maybe you don't want to grow, or maybe there are certain avenues you don't want to pursue, where the board as a collective may decide this is what we must do in order to grow. And they decide as a collective that we're going to go in this direction. Well, which one do you think you should do when it comes to your nonprofit? Well, according to the law and your ethical responsibility, you got to do what the board decides is best for the organization, not necessarily what you want to do. It's not your organization legally. It's your organization and the ideas you created and you creating the seed and starting it. But once it grows, you cannot control everything. And this is what's most scary for nonprofit founders, but it's something you really have to understand and grasp so you can make smarter decisions about how you want to approach your nonprofit. You have to be really careful about the decisions you make that really benefit you personally, because that's what's going to get you in hot water. So especially when it comes to money, if the organization raises a certain amount of money and you want to use it for certain purposes that are not in alignment with what the mission is or what you decided that's your budget, then you can potentially put your organization at risk by making decisions like that. If you want to hire your brother's company, not because he's the best company to work with, but simply because that's your brother, I will be very careful about making decisions like that. And hey, I can't speak for you. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you how to approach your nonprofit. I can just tell you what the potential risk is and warn you so you know how to do your research and figure out what's the best route to take. So the bottom line is, if you're looking to personally help your family, if you feel like this is like a personal thing where, oh, I'm doing this to help my family, and when we get this nonprofit, it's going to help us save on this, and it's going to help us do this, and it's really centered on helping you and bettering you, I do advise you to take a step back and think about the organization as a whole and what its intention is. And the intention of using a nonprofit corporation and getting 501c3 status is to benefit the public. And there are certain responsibilities that you have that go beyond what you personally want. If you need help with your nonprofit, you can visit me at bossonabudget.com, because I have resources there that can help you along your journey, because I know this gets a little complicated and it gets a little confusing. So you can visit me at that website to learn more. And if you want to know more about how I would approach my first year as a nonprofit founder, check out this video that I am linking at the end to talk about 7 things that I would have on my checklist as a nonprofit founder. Thanks for watching.